Hello, welcome to the Airline Weekly Lounge podcast. My name is Jay Shabbat. I am joined today by Meghna Maharishi. And today, in part one of the show, we're going to talk about the government shutdown and how it's affecting air traffic control. And then in part two, we'll have a discussion about JetBlue and its third quarter earnings. Meghna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. You confused me this morning because you said you're on your way to LaGuardia Airport. So I assume that you're flying somewhere, but
No, I was attending a press conference from the Department of Transportation about the government shutdown. I think also as a reporter, I feel like whenever I'm going to the airport at this point, I'm never actually taking a flight.
yeah, I think you're one of the very few people who regularly go to the airports without flying. It's unless you're an airport worker, I guess that would be the big exception. But anyway, I digress. So you went to LaGuardia Airport, and tell us what did you hear? Who was there? Who was speaking? And what did you learn?
So at least like while we're recording this on October 28th, this is the first day that air traffic controllers have missed their paycheck, which is why the transportation department was having this press conference at LaGuardia. And I think also today, there were like groups of air traffic controllers at airports at New York, uh, DC, Boston, and Philly that were like handing out flyers to travelers to talk about the government shutdown. And I think it was just part of the air traffic controllers union's efforts to raise more awareness on how the shutdown is going to impact air travel.
Okay, yeah, and how does it sound? Does it seem like it's already having a big impact, or on the contrary, is are things more or less running smoothly?
Sort of feels like watching one of those things like that could be maybe a disaster in slow motion, if that makes sense. Because so far, this government shutdown has gone on for almost a month now. The impact has been relatively minimal, like, there have been some delays at airports all over the country, like, this past Sunday, there were a lot of delays out of LAX due to staffing shortages, so there is already, like, some strain on the system, but I think there was some buffer time this past month too because air traffic controllers did receive a partial paycheck on October 14th. This is now just, like, the first day that they haven't gotten a paycheck, and now they are actually having to show up to work unpaid. So it's unclear if that will maybe compel Congress to come together and figure out some sort of deal to reopen the government or to pay the air traffic controllers.
Right, and if I remember, one of the previous shutdowns, was it 2019 when it
Yep.
was the air traffic controllers not getting paid, not coming to work, calling in sick. That was ultimately what got people together in Washington to end the shutdown, right? I mean, I think that influenced a lot of people back then. So we'll see if, maybe it has the same effect this time. Now, have you, just in listening, we'll talk about JetBlue in a moment, but listening to some airline executives during here we are, third quarter earnings season. A few carriers have already spoken publicly about their earnings, and just in more broadly, having spoken spoken with a lot of different airlines. Have you do you get a sense that the airlines themselves are feeling the pressure? Are their operations stressed? Are they worried about what's going to be happening in over the next couple weeks?
So far, no. I think almost every major airline CEO has said during their earnings calls this past month that they haven't really been feeling the impacts of the shutdown yet. But at the same time, all of them are warning that it could get worse the longer this shutdown goes on. And the thing is, I feel like probably any political reporter would say that this shutdown is different than any of the previous ones, given that, at least from looking at any other news report, like, there hasn't been any indication that Congress is willing to come together right now to reach some sort of deal. I think in past government shutdowns, they have, like, worked to end them as soon as possible, and now it also seems as if the Trump administration and the GOP leadership are potentially bracing for this shutdown to maybe stretch into the holiday travel season, which starts in November.
Well, that was my next question. We are approaching the very, very busiest travel period of the year, that Thanksgiving period. And I was I was going to ask you if you think it might stretch that far. It sounds like some of the people involved in Washington do, in fact, think that.
Yeah, it seems like it is probably becoming more and more of a possibility each day this shutdown goes on. And at least like hearing from air traffic controllers today at LaGuardia, I think morale is already pretty low. There was already been like a pretty bad shortage affecting them since COVID, basically. And I think like things like the shutdown don't necessarily help. So it's again like really unclear if they will maybe like reach a deal before Thanksgiving, but now it seems as if Washington is potentially bracing for the worst. I did ask like the DOT today if they are potentially considering like a contingency plan of some sort to pay air traffic controllers just because the Trump administration said, I believe like last week that they would try to pay military members during the shutdown and they received that $130 million donation from Timothy Mellon, the billionaire. Um, but Sean Duffy said that it's really challenging to find the money in the FAA's budget during the shutdown to provide pay to air traffic controllers.
I was just checking my pockets if I had any money to donate. I do not have that spare billion, but I'll let you know if I come up with anything. I'll look under the seat cushions here on my couch. More seriously, just so everybody is aware, I know we have a lot of non-U.S. listeners. November 27th is Thanksgiving this year. We're talking today on the 28th of October, so we're almost exactly a month out. So that's they there is that, another couple of weeks, another 4 weeks or so before that real big holiday push. But I don't know, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of optimism within the beltway, as they say, the Washington beltway.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, I think the air traffic controllers are really hoping that maybe some sort of deal will be reached in the next 2 weeks. And I think that's also what the airline CEOs want because if more and more of these air traffic controllers start to call in sick and not show up, it's going to create a lot of problems, especially like right before Thanksgiving.
All right. Now, I just ask you a personal question. Are you traveling Thanksgiving?
No, I'm
Air, I should say, by air. Do you have any airline tickets booked?
no, I'm local. I'm from New Jersey, so I just commute over the bus from New York City back to New
I was
Jersey.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, if you, I'm not I don't have any travel air travel plans either. And, yeah, I was gonna ask you if you're if you're starting to get nervous. We'll have to pull some of our other skiffed colleagues who are traveling by air and, get a sense of their level of anxiety. Well, thanks, Meghna, for that. That's a good update on a, not so pleasant, development for the airline industry. So we're gonna take a break now. When we come back, we will talk about JetBlue and their third quarter earnings. Okay, we're back. I'm with Meghna Maharishi. I neglected to say earlier that our fearless friend Gordon is speaking at the Skift forum in Abu Dhabi right now. So, again, we're talking on Tuesday, October 28th, which is why he's not with us. But thanks again to Meghna for joining. And we're going to turn our attention to JetBlue now. So, JetBlue, both Meghna and I were listening to JetBlue's earnings call, third quarter earnings call this morning. So before I go any further, I'll, as I usually do, give you some numbers on how they did. It wasn't good, and probably shouldn't come as a surprise. JetBlue has had a string of pretty lousy earnings over the past couple of years. This year's third quarter certainly wasn't anything to celebrate. Their operating margin was -4%. And so far, of all the U.S. airlines that have reported so far, they're the only ones that had a negative operating margin. So we had, even American. We talked about how their margin was not so great, but at least they did positive 1%. Southwest, same situation. That was certainly not anything we're gonna throw a parade for, but at least they did a 0.6 positive. But JetBlue, as I said, -4%. So I'll say a few things, and feel free to jump in anytime, Meghna. But I'll just say a few things about why JetBlue is has had trouble specifically this summer. So one, I mean, I think it's true that all U.S. airlines Even the ones that did have strong quarters, like Delta and United, did say that the early part of the quarter, July specifically, was a little bit rougher than usual. It was unexpectedly weak because of some of the uncertainty flying around the economy with the whole tariff situation in the springtime. That was a kind of a prime booking window for people booking travel, for a month like July, for example. JetBlue did say that uh, demand trends sequentially got better as the quarter progressed, and they said that even looking into the fall, that things look better. So this just should also all sound familiar. I think most of the other U.S. airlines, maybe all of them, I should say, had basically kind of said the same thing, that July was weak, and then things got better progressively as the quarter ensued. But JetBlue is starting from a lower point. They had been losing money earlier. They still had, once again, their GTF engine problems. We've talked about that in the past. These are engines, Airbus planes with engines that require inspection, so they weren't able to fly. That messes that messes airlines up in a whole bunch of different ways. Messes with their fleet utilization, with their staffing levels, and all sorts of stuff like that. They did say that they're kind of rolling downhill with that now. The worst of that situation is now in the past, and they had about 9 aircraft on the ground on average this year in 2025, or will have by the end of this year. They have about 6 currently, and they said that it's going to go down to like low mid single digits in 2026. So again, some positive momentum there. I'll mention 2 or 3 other things before I turn it over to you, Meghna, for any comments. But one, they did have some capacity pressure in some of their core markets. That may sound counterintuitive because Spirit, which is a very close competitor, in fact, they tried to buy Spirit, you'll all remember. Spirit is, very much smaller than they used to be. That should be, and is in fact a positive for JetBlue. But there were some other kind of opposite trends in the capacity area. Breeze and Allegiant, even Delta to some extent, has added some capacity. New England or Florida, things like that. That probably hurt. They are exposed to some of this government stuff, not so much that Megan and I were just talking about, not really. This whole shutdown thing is more of a fourth quarter, not a third quarter thing. But there were government budget cuts that hurt them in the summer period. Washington DCA Reagan National Airport, that is not a huge market for them. I don't think it's like top 10 as if you look at their busiest airports, but it's close. It's like 11 or 12, I think, last checked. So, I think there's some a little bit of a pain there. And then I'll say one more thing is that they are taking advantage of Spirit's big contraction by growing very heavily in Fort Lauderdale, and they're grabbing a bunch of international gates there, and that'll probably work out well for them in the future, or so they're betting. But in the short term, that is, surely hurting their yields. So I've said a lot there. Feel free to disagree with anything I said, Meghna, or add anything. But I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything. I was gonna say as far as Spirit goes, it's interesting how all these airlines were really betting on Spirit's demise because JetBlue is not the only airline that has like added a ton of routes out of Fort Lauderdale. But it seems as if Spirit might have some legroom now, given that it got that 475 million in funding for during its bankruptcy, and
Literally and figuratively.
yeah,
That's
seems like they might be okay. Obviously, like we'll see what happens, but um, I always thought it was interesting how all these airlines seem to have gotten a little excited that there might be an opening in Fort Lauderdale, which I guess must be a really busy market in Florida. I mean, I don't travel a lot to Florida, but I know like Frontier and United were also adding quite a few routes out of there as well.
right, right, and it
Uh,
may be harder to compete with them than it is, with a wounded Spirit.
Yeah. I will also say, I mean, like, this is probably, like, always, like, the biggest theme during earnings, but it feels even bigger, more so now. JetBlue is also making a lot of strides in premium. I mean, they said that they're planning to debut a sort of, like, mini Mint, class of seats on some of their domestic flights late next year, and they're also on track to still open their first ever lounge out of JFK at the end of this year. So, I'm curious to see as to, like, how those, like, premium investments end up, paying off for them.
Yeah, good point. They're definitely putting their pressing down on the gas pedal, so to speak, with premium. They're not letting up on that, and they did say that the premium that's all going well, which again is something we've heard from airline after airline in the U.S. So it doesn't seem to be anything unusual about that. It sounds like what's really hurting for them is the off peak periods that you'll I think we'll hear more of that. We haven't heard from Frontier yet, and Spirit we won't hear from because they're not going to do a call, but maybe even Allegiant, Sun Country. The off peak periods seem to be weaker than they have been traditionally. And then maybe I mean, who knows? That could be because of travel patterns. It could be because of just more aggressive pricing from some of these basic economy fares that are floating around the market. But for whatever reason, I think JetBlue is doing fine. When we talk about Thanksgiving, they'll probably do fine. Pending what we were talking about earlier with the government shutdown stuff. But they I think it's those, random Tuesdays and, non-peak period. Or you think about Florida being like a hugely seasonal market. September this period actually is a very weak period for Florida because it's hurricane season. So people even and I used to live in Florida and South Florida, and I always used to tell people if you're a gambler, October is a great time to visit because the weather is like perfect in October. It's almost as good as like in March. It's very comparable, which is the super peak. But there is always a chance if you come in October, you're going to get whacked with a hurricane. Your vacation is going to be ruined. So that is kind of weak period, and then September like super weak, August and September. So that's I think they've struggled with the off peaks. A few other things I'll just mention about JetBlue that came out of the call. They do have that new mini alliance. I almost hesitate the word alliance. It sounds too strong, but the partnership with United, they call it Blue Sky. They said it's on track. They said that, bookings are coming in pretty strong as I mentioned, and they did not seem to have anything negative to say yet about the government shutdown as far as its impact on demand. They said that nothing so far. They are pretty heavily exposed to the Jamaican market. Please check this. I have to go check I see this in my notes here. I have to go check the earnings transcript, but I believe they said Jamaica was almost 3% of their Q4 capacity. I'm not sure if you caught that, Meghna, but if that's true, or even if it's close to true, that's kind of a pretty big deal because there's a big hurricane going on there right now, and all our best to the people affected by that. But they will certainly, feel a some sort of financial damage from that as well in the fourth quarter. So I think I've covered most of uh, what most of my takeaways from the JetBlue call. Anything to add?
Yeah, I guess is just going off of that United partnership. It seems as if there is also just a lot of hope from Wall Street and also JetBlue executives that they will, get a lot out of this partnership and that it will be very profitable for them, which I guess it makes sense, given that United has like this big network and this big loyalty program. It'll also be interesting to see like when United gets some of those JFK slots from JetBlue, which I guess is also something that United has always wanted. And I also
Yes.
just wanted to point out, even with the third quarter, I think another takeaway just from JetBlue and some of the other carriers that have reported earnings this past month is that it seems as if it's fundamentally changing. I feel like third quarter was always very profitable along with the second quarter because it was summer travel. And now it seems as if like the travel patterns are really beginning to change and like they seem to start for this quarter, it seemed like it dipped for a bit in July and August. And now in the fourth quarter it's coming back. And I guess as we've discussed, maybe also like the school schedules and things like the weather are, like, playing a role in that, but, it feels as if there's been, like, a shift that's been going on for the past couple years.
definitely, right, and they did mention that international demand was trending better than domestic. Now, international for them, they didn't specify, but when we're talking international for them, we're talking about pretty much Caribbean, upper South America, and then, of course, some of the European stuff, that they have, far Western Europe, London, you could probably name them better than I can, but, what is it, Dublin and Edinburgh, and are they doing Amsterdam yet, or is that started yet?
They
Uh,
do Amsterdam, and I think they
they do
also do Madrid now too.
Madrid, yeah, okay, okay. And I know they've tried to do Lisbon, but they couldn't get the airport slots there, so they've got some of that, and they said, international again, I'm not sure if they were specifically talking about Latin or Europe or both, but they said international was doing better than domestic. So that's, one other thing to keep in mind. I guess I'll just say one more thing, and then we'll, put this podcast to rest. They one thing they never talk about, and I don't know, none of the airlines talk. There's 5 US airlines that are very exposed to the transcontinental market. So that's all the flights going cross country. So, New York, LA, New York, San Francisco, Boston to California, Boston to Seattle, those kind of Washington, if you want. And you can, expand the definition however you want. You can include Florida to California, or, you know, does Boston to Las Vegas count? Whatever you want to include, but that those transcon routes are a very, very big part of JetBlue's network, particularly in terms of ASMs and available seat miles. And that's important because available seat miles it's your unit of production that's going to be very important in shaping the economics of your airline. So that transcon market, I want to know how they're doing on transcon. They didn't say it, and they and other airlines never specifically talk about transcon. Not sure why, but we'll have to press them for some more color on that market, because it's a real big one for them. And you have to assume that same thing, that it was the transcon market was affected this summer by some of the economic uncertainty in the spring that kind of infected early summer bookings. But that's big question mark there. So that's all I have. If you don't have anything else to add, Meghna, I think we'll call it a podcast. And I would just encourage everybody to take a look at our upcoming issue of Airline Weekly that publishes on Monday. And also, if you haven't booked your tickets already to the Skift Aviation Forum in Fort Worth, Texas, in December, please take a look at that. We hope to see you there. Meghna and I will be there. Gordon will be there as well. So we hope to see you. And with that, thanks everybody, and have a great week.
Whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, please make sure to subscribe, rate us 5 stars, or leave us a positive review. This really helps us get the word out about the Airline Weekly Lounge, so we can continue to bring you this podcast every week, absolutely free of charge. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Skift channel and hit the notification bell to find out whenever a new video drops.